You know, some secrets have a way of destroying everything you've ever built. I replaced my cheating husband's lube with superglue, and what happened next brought the entire neighborhood to my front door. But let me start from the beginning, when everything still felt perfect. I'm really glad you're here. If you're watching this, don't forget to like and subscribe. And drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from. I'd love to see how far this story of revenge has reached. My name is Veronica, and 3 months ago, I thought I had it all figured out. On a warm October morning in Columbus, Ohio, my kitchen at Midwest Flavors was absolutely buzzing. We had 12 catering orders for the Ohio State game that weekend. My famous honey bourbon wings, loaded mac and cheese, and those cinnamon apple turnovers that had people literally lining up around the block. I was elbow deep in prep work, flour dusting my apron, when my phone rang. The caller ID made me smile. It was my husband Victor calling from his accounting firm downtown. "Hey beautiful." His familiar voice warmed my ear. "How's my successful businesswoman handling the game day rush?" I laughed, wiping my hands on my apron. "Your successful businesswoman is currently drowning in wing sauce and loving every minute of it. Mrs. Patterson next door already stopped by asking if we're catering her book club next month." We'd built this life together over 32 years. Our 2-story colonial with the wraparound porch that Victor painted every spring. The herb garden where we drink coffee on Sunday mornings. Him reading me funny headlines from the sports section. The way he still grabbed my hand during our evening walks through our quiet Clintonville neighborhood. Just last week, at our neighbor's retirement party, Victor had pulled me onto their makeshift dance floor in the backyard. "Still the most beautiful woman in the room," he whispered in my ear as we swayed to some old Eagles song. I felt like the luckiest woman alive. But then, as I was telling him about my day, my phone buzzed with a text. I glanced down automatically and felt something cold slide down my spine. "Hey babe, can we push dinner to tomorrow night? Big client emergency at the firm. You know how it is." The third time this week. The same vague excuse. The same apologetic tone that somehow felt hollow. I stared at that text message, my hands still covered in flour, and felt the first tiny crack appear in my perfect world. You know how they say ignorance is bliss? Well, let me tell you, the moment that bliss shattered for me was on a gray afternoon when I was drowning in receipts and tax documents. Victor had always handled our finances. After 32 years of marriage, I trusted him completely with the numbers while I focused on growing Midwest Flavors. But our accountant needed everything organized by categories, so there I was in our home office, surrounded by towers of paperwork that seemed to multiply every time I blinked. I was hunting for our quarterly business expense reports when I opened the desk drawer, where Victor kept our bank statements. My fingers were already reaching for the manila folder, when something made me pause. A statement from our joint savings account was lying face up, and the number at the bottom made my heart skip. $23,000. Wait. That couldn't be right. Last time I'd checked, we had $38,000 in savings. I grabbed my reading glasses and stared at the page until the numbers burned into my retinas. There it was, clear as day. A transfer of $15,000 to an account I'd never seen before. The blood drained from my face so fast I had to sit down. All that money. Gone. Not a withdrawal for something we'd discussed. A transfer to account ending in 7429. When Victor walked through the door that evening, I was waiting in the kitchen with the statement spread across our breakfast table, like evidence in a courtroom. "Honey, what's this?" I tried to keep my voice casual, but my hands were trembling as I pointed to the transfer. His reaction was immediate. Too immediate. Like he'd been rehearsing. "Oh, that." He loosened his tie without meeting my eyes. "Investment opportunity through the firm. Johnson recommended it. You know how conservative I usually am with our money, but this one's a sure thing. I wanted to surprise you with the returns." The explanation rolled off his tongue so smoothly it made my skin crawl. In 32 years, Victor had never made a major financial decision without discussing it with me first. Not when we bought the house. Not when I needed startup capital for the catering business. Never. "Which firm?" I asked, studying his face. "Meridian Holdings. They specialize in real estate portfolios." He was already walking toward the stairs. I'm going to shower before dinner. And there it was. The shower. Just like every other night for the past 2 months. Victor used to come home, kiss me hello, and we'd talk about our days while I finished cooking. Now he went straight upstairs, and by the time he came back down, he smelled like soap and that new cologne I couldn't quite place. When had that started? When had my husband of 3 decades begun treating our home like a hotel, where he needed to wash away the day, before he could relax? That night, as Victor slept beside me, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. The screen lit up with a preview notification that made my entire world tilt sideways. Can't stop thinking about this afternoon. Sleep tight, gorgeous. The sender? My heart hammered so loud I was sure it would wake him. Victor's phone had never gotten text messages this late. Victor didn't have friends who called him gorgeous. Victor didn't have friends named A, who sent heart emojis at 11:30 at night. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling while the man I'd shared my life with breathed peacefully beside me. The same man who still made me coffee every morning. Who still kissed my forehead when he thought I was sleeping. Who apparently had someone else calling him gorgeous. Late-night texts. New cologne. Immediate showers. The pieces weren't forming a complete picture yet, but they were definitely forming something. And that something was making me feel sick to my stomach. Have you ever had that moment when you realize you don't know the person sleeping next to you as well as you thought you did? The next 3 days were the longest of my life. Every smile Victor gave me felt like a lie. Every "how was your day, beautiful?" made my skin crawl. But I needed proof. Real proof. Not just gut feelings and mysterious text messages. So I did something I never thought I'd do in 32 years of marriage. I became a detective in my own home. It started small. Victor always left his laptop open in the office when he showered. Just 5 minutes. That's all I needed. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type his password. Our anniversary date, something that now felt like a cruel joke. His email was clean. Too clean. Like someone had gone through and deleted everything personal. But Victor wasn't tech-savvy enough to think about cloud storage. That's where I found the first photo. Hidden in a folder labeled Work Conferences 2023, was an image that made my blood turn to ice. Victor, looking happier than I'd seen him in months, his arm wrapped around someone in a red dress. But the photo was cropped just above the woman's chest. No face. No identifying features. Just Victor's wedding ring glinting in restaurant lighting, his hand possessively gripping a stranger's waist. I scrolled through more photos, my heart breaking with each click. Victor at what looked like a wine bar, raising a glass toward the camera, but the person holding the other glass was cut from the frame. Victor in a hotel lobby I didn't recognize, looking over his shoulder at someone just out of view, his expression soft and intimate in a way that used to be reserved only for me. But it was the metadata that destroyed me. The dates. These photos were taken throughout the past 6 months. While I was working 16-hour days building my catering business. While I was making his favorite pot roast on Sundays. While I was planning our anniversary celebration. I screenshot everything with trembling fingers, creating my own secret folder of evidence. Then I went deeper. His credit card statements revealed a paper trail of deception that made me physically nauseous. Dinner at the top steakhouse, a place so expensive I'd only been there once for our 20th anniversary, on February 14th, Valentine's Day. The same night he told me he was stuck in Cleveland for a client emergency, and couldn't make our reservation at our usual Italian place. $137 for dinner for 2. While I sat at home eating leftover Chinese food. Worried he was working too hard. Hotel charges. Not business hotels. Boutique places with names like The Romance Inn and Sunset Suites. Always on nights when he claimed to be traveling for work. Always for one night. Always paid for with our joint credit card. Money I had earned serving honey bourbon wings and apple turnovers to happy families while my husband was building a secret life. But the worst part? The patterns. Every charge, every photo, every lie corresponded with days when I'd been especially busy with catering orders. Victor had been timing his betrayals around my success. When I was too exhausted to be suspicious. when I was too focused on my business to notice my marriage crumbling. I found receipts for jewelry I'd never seen, expensive perfume from department stores I couldn't afford, flowers delivered to addresses I didn't recognize. Victor was courting someone with the money I helped earn, while I wore the same apron I'd owned for 5 years and drove a catering van with a dented bumper. The evidence was overwhelming, but the identity of A remained a ghost. Every digital breadcrumb led to more questions. Who was she? How long had this been going on? Did she know about me? Did she know she was destroying a 32-year marriage? As I closed the laptop and erased my browsing history, I caught sight of myself in the dark computer screen. I looked like a stranger. Hollow-eyed. Haunted. This wasn't the woman who'd built a successful business from scratch. This wasn't the woman who used to laugh until her sides hurt at Victor's terrible jokes. This was a woman whose husband was systematically erasing their life together, one secret charge at a time. But I still didn't know who A was. And that not knowing was eating me alive from the inside out. Have you ever felt like you were living with a complete stranger who happened to share your last name? I couldn't carry this weight alone anymore. The evidence was crushing me, but I needed someone to tell me I wasn't losing my mind. Someone who knew Victor almost as well as I did. Someone I could trust completely. My sister Brittany. She was 14 years younger, still finishing her nursing degree, and had always looked up to me. I'd been the one helping her through school, covering her rent when her part-time job at the clinic wasn't enough. She called me her hero, her rock, the sister who'd sacrificed to make sure she could follow her dreams. If anyone would listen without judgment, it would be Brittany. I met her at our usual spot, the little coffee shop on High Street where we'd been meeting for Sunday morning catch-ups since she moved to Columbus. She looked radiant that morning, practically glowing in a way that made me momentarily forget my own misery. "You look amazing," I told her as she slid into the booth across from me. "Nursing school is treating you well." She laughed, tucking a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. "Just been getting better sleep lately. You on the other hand." She studied my face with those sharp blue eyes that ran in our family. "Veronica, you look exhausted. What's going on?" So I told her. Everything. The missing money, the strange behavior, the mysterious texts from A. I watched her face carefully, looking for recognition, for anger on my behalf, for anything that said she believed me. Instead, I got something that made my stomach drop. "Oh honey," she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "You've been working yourself to death with the catering business. 16-hour days, barely sleeping. Are you sure you're not just stressed? Maybe seeing things that aren't there?" The words hit me like a slap. "Brittany, I saw the bank statements. I saw the photos." "Photos can be innocent," she said gently. "And Victor's always been responsible with money. Maybe there's an explanation you haven't thought of." She tilted her head, her expression so sincere it made me doubt myself. "When's the last time you two went on a real date? Maybe he's planning something special, and doesn't want to spoil the surprise." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her so badly that for a moment, I almost convinced myself she was right. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe the stress was getting to me. "You know what you need." Brittany stood up, grabbing her purse. "A distraction. Come back to my apartment, and help me make that lemon cake recipe you taught me. The one from Mom's cookbook." An hour later, I was in Brittany's tiny kitchen, surrounded by flour and butter, trying to remember why I'd been so worried. She was right. Maybe I had been imagining things. "Maybe, Ronnie, can you look up the exact oven temperature? I can never remember if it's 350 or 375. She tossed me her iPad from across the counter. The recipe should be in my saved files. I caught the tablet and swiped it open, intending to search for the recipe. But the screen was already open to messages. iMessage. And as I stared at the interface, trying to figure out how to navigate to her files, a new notification popped up at the top of the screen. A message. To Brittany. From Victor. "Can't wait for tonight, baby. Same hotel as last time." The iPad slipped from my hands and clattered onto the kitchen counter. The sound seemed to echo in the sudden silence. Brittany turned from the mixing bowl, saw my face, saw the tablet. I immediately apologized. Silly old me, so clumsy these days. I picked up the tab and continued searching for the recipe. A bomb had just detonated in my heart. I was like a robot in my sister's house after that moment. I'm so late, I abruptly exclaimed, quickly picking up my bag and keys. I forgot the appointment with Mrs. Patterson? But we're not done with the recipe, Brittany called out. But I was already running. I drove home in a daze, my hands gripping the steering wheel, so tight, my knuckles went white. The sister who called me her hero. The sister I'd sacrificed for, supported through everything. The sister who'd been systematically destroying my life while sitting across from me every Sunday morning, pretending to care. But as I sat in my driveway, staring at the house Victor and I had built together, something inside me shifted. The tears stopped. The heartbreak crystallized into something harder, colder, more dangerous. If they wanted to play games, I'd show them what 32 years of marriage to a woman who built a business from nothing had taught me about strategy. I waited until Victor left for work, the next morning, then I became a woman possessed. No more casual snooping. No more hoping I was wrong. This time, I was going to find everything. I started with his old laptop, the one he'd replaced last year but kept for backup files. It took me 3 hours to crack his password. Not our anniversary this time, but Brittany's birthday. That should have hurt, but I was beyond feeling pain. I was focused. What I found made my blood run cold. Email drafts. Dozens of them, never sent, but saved like love letters between conspirators. Victor and Brittany had been planning this for 8 months. Not just an affair. A complete financial takeover. The second mortgage paperwork goes through next week. One draft read. Once we have the cash from both properties, we can trigger the incompetency hearing. Your medical testimony will be crucial. Second mortgage? I scrolled frantically through the documents folder. There it was. Papers I'd never seen. Signatures I'd never made. Except they looked exactly like my handwriting. Victor had been practicing my signature for months. $75,000. Borrowed against our home. Money I'd never authorized. Secured by forged documents that could send us both to prison. Except I didn't know they existed. But it got worse. So much worse. Credit card statements revealed the true scope of their theft. Not just the $15,000 from savings. They'd been bleeding us dry for months. Cash advances, transfers, payments to accounts I'd never heard of. My successful catering business was funding their escape plan, while I worked myself to exhaustion trying to keep us afloat. Then I found the legal consultation records. Victor had been meeting with divorce attorneys, but not for a normal separation. He was building a case to have me declared mentally incompetent, unfit to manage my own business, unable to handle financial decisions. Subject shows signs of paranoid behavior and memory issues, read one lawyer's notes. Sister Ashley Thompson, RN student, willing to provide medical testimony regarding erratic behavior patterns and emotional instability. Recommend immediate psychiatric evaluation and business asset protection. Ashley Thompson. Not Brittany. My sister had given them her real name for their legal documents while lying to me about everything else, including her identity. They weren't just stealing my money. They were going to steal my mind, my business, my entire identity. Paint me as crazy while they walked away with everything I'd built. The final email draft was dated just 3 days ago. Everything's in place. The psychiatric evaluation is scheduled for next month. Once the court declares her incompetent, we'll have full control of Midwest Flavors and both properties. We can be in Miami by Christmas. She'll never see it coming. I sat back in the chair, surrounded by the evidence of their betrayal, and felt something I'd never experienced before. Pure, focused rage that burned cold instead of hot. They'd underestimated me completely. They thought the woman who built a successful business from a folding table in her garage would just crumble when they destroyed her world. They were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. How far would you go if someone tried to steal not just your life, but your sanity? I needed more than email drafts and forged documents. I needed proof that would hold up in court. Evidence so crystal clear that no lawyer could twist it into misunderstandings or paranoid delusions. I needed a professional. Marcus Chun came highly recommended by my business attorney, a former Columbus police detective turned private investigator who specialized in marital cases. His office was a small, nondescript space above a tax preparation service on Broad Street, but his reputation was spotless. "Mrs. Martinez," he said as I sat across from his cluttered desk, "I've seen your evidence. This isn't just infidelity we're dealing with. This is organized fraud. Are you prepared for what we might find?" I met his steady gaze. "I need to know everything, no matter how much it hurts." "It will hurt," he said quietly. "It always does." He was right. 3 days later, Marcus called me to his office. The manila folder he placed in front of me felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "I followed them for 72 hours, he said. "Mrs. Martinez, I'm sorry, but there's no ambiguity here." The first photo showed Victor and Ashley walking hand in hand through Goodale Park, the same park where Victor and I used to take our evening walks. She was wearing a yellow sundress I'd never seen, laughing at something he'd whispered in her ear. His free hand was resting possessively on her lower back. The second photo was taken at North Star Cafe in the short north. They were sharing a slice of cheesecake, Ashley feeding Victor from her fork while he gazed at her like she was the only woman in the world. The same way he used to look at me. But it was the third photo that shattered what was left of my heart. Victor and Ashley in the lobby of the Marriott downtown, kissing. Not a quick peck or a friendly goodbye. A deep, passionate kiss between two people completely lost in each other. His wedding ring, my grandmother's ring that I'd placed on his finger 32 years ago, glinted under the hotel lighting as his hands cupped her face. "There's more," Marcus said gently, pulling out a tablet. "Video footage from yesterday. I watched my husband and my sister enter the hotel elevator together. Watched them emerge 47 minutes later, Ashley's hair disheveled. Victor's shirt wrinkled in a way that told me everything I needed to know about how they'd spent those 47 minutes. The timestamp showed 2:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. The same Tuesday when Victor had texted me that he was stuck in back-to-back client meetings and wouldn't be home until late. The financial records you provided match their pattern," Marcus continued, showing me a detailed timeline. "Every hotel charge corresponds with these meetings. They've been doing this for at least 6 months, possibly longer." 6 months. Half a year of lies, stolen money, and calculated betrayal. Half a year of Victor coming home to me after being with her, kissing my forehead goodnight with the same lips that had been all over my sister's body. "There's one more thing," Marcus said, his voice carefully neutral. He handed me an audio device. "I was able to plant a listening device in your sister's car yesterday. You need to hear this." I pressed play and heard Ashley's voice, clear as crystal. "God, I feel bad sometimes. She works so hard on that catering thing. But she's completely clueless about what's happening right under her nose." Then Victor's voice, tired but satisfied. "She trusts people too much. Always has. Makes this whole thing a lot easier than it should be." "When do you think we should tell her about the house?" "After the competency hearing. Once everything's locked up legally. No point causing drama before we have to." The worst part wasn't the photos. It wasn't even watching them kiss in that hotel lobby like teenagers drunk on forbidden love. The worst part was what Marcus played for me next. "I managed to get a recording device into Victor's car," he said, his weathered face grim. "What you're about to hear, Mrs. Martinez, maybe you should have someone here with you." I shook my head. "Just play it." The audio was crystal clear. Victor's voice filled the small office, and I could hear the hum of his Camry's engine in the background. "So the lawyer says we can file the paperwork as early as next month," Victor was saying. He sounded different. Not the gentle man who made me coffee every morning. This voice was clinical, calculating. "That fast?" Brittany's voice made my skin crawl. She sounded excited. "Yeah, apparently having medical testimony from a family member speeds up the process. Especially when that family member is studying to be a nurse." Brittany laughed, actually laughed, and the sound was like glass breaking in my chest. "It's almost too easy. Ronnie's so busy with her little food business. She doesn't pay attention to anything else. She'd sign those mortgage papers without even reading them. Wait. She actually signed them? Victor sounded surprised. God no, she's not that stupid. But you've gotten really good at copying her signature. I've been practicing on old birthday cards for months. There was a pause, then Victor's voice again. Sometimes I feel like we're going too far. She's been good to both of us. My heart leaped for just a second. Maybe there was still some part of the man I'd married left inside him. Then Brittany spoke. And that hope died completely. Victor, she makes 15 grand a month with that catering business. 15 grand. And what does she do with it? Saves it in boring bank accounts, pays off the mortgage early, lives like we're still broke college kids. She's sitting on a gold mine and treating it like grocery money. I know. But nothing. She's 54 years old. In 10 years, she'll probably want to retire anyway. We're just accelerating the timeline. She'll be fine. The state will take care of her once she's declared incompetent. The beach house in Clearwater is perfect, Victor said, and I could hear him warming up to the idea again. Right on the water. 3 bedrooms, pool, boat. Dock. We could be living there by Christmas. With her money funding our new life, Brittany added. It's poetic justice, really. She always acted like she was so much better than me, the successful big sister, who had to help poor little Brittany through school. Well, poor little Brittany is about to own everything she's worked for. The venom in her voice was like poison in my veins. This wasn't just about money. This was about years of resentment I'd never even known existed. What about the catering business? Victor asked. We'll sell it as soon as the conservatorship goes through. I already have buyers lined up. Local restaurant group is interested in her client list and recipes. They're offering 40 grand cash. $42,000. For the business I'd built with my own hands, working 16-hour days, perfecting every recipe, building relationships with every client. You know what I call her when I talk to the lawyer? Brittany continued, her voice dripping with mockery. The golden goose. She just keeps producing money, completely unaware that we're planning the slaughter. They both laughed at that. Actually laughed. Marcus stopped the recording. The silence in his office was deafening. Mrs. Martinez? Are you all right? I wasn't all right. I would never be all right again. But I was something else now. Something harder and more dangerous than I'd ever been in my life. How long do I have before they file the paperwork? I asked. My voice steady as steel. Based on what they said, maybe 3 weeks. 3 weeks to save my life, my business, and my sanity. I drove home from Marcus's office in complete silence. No radio. No phone calls. No tears. Just the steady hum of my engine, and the echo of my sister's laughter playing on repeat in my head. The golden goose. That's what I was to them. Not a wife. Not a sister. A resource to be harvested. I pulled into my driveway and sat there for a long moment, staring at the house Victor and I had called home for 15 years. The wraparound porch he'd painted last spring. The herb garden where we used to drink coffee on Sunday mornings. The life we'd built together, which apparently had been nothing but a long con. Inside, the kitchen felt different. Foreign. Like I was seeing it through new eyes. Everything looked the same. The coffee maker Victor used every morning. The flowers he'd brought me last week that were now wilting in their vase. The wedding photo on the counter that showed 2 young people who believed in forever. I picked up that photo and studied it. 22-year-old me in my grandmother's wedding dress, gazing at 25-year-old Victor, like he'd hung the stars. We looked so happy, so genuine, so completely, devastatingly naive. Had any of it been real? Or had I been the golden goose even then? I opened the frame and slid the photo out. For a moment, I held it in my hands, remembering that day. The way Victor had cried when I walked down the aisle. The promise we'd made to love each other through everything life threw at us. Then I tore it in half. Not dramatically. Not in a fit of rage. Just calmly. Methodically, like I was disposing of any other piece of trash. As the pieces fluttered into the garbage can, I felt the last bit of my old life settle into place beside them. For 32 years, I'd been Veronica the wife, Veronica the sister, the woman who made coffee just the way Victor liked it and covered Brittany's rent when she was short. The woman who believed that love and loyalty were currencies that actually mattered. But love hadn't protected me from their lies. Loyalty hadn't stopped them from planning my destruction. Standing in my kitchen, surrounded by the ghost of a marriage that had apparently been dead for months, I realized something that should have terrified me but didn't. I didn't want to save my marriage anymore. I didn't want to fix things with Brittany. I didn't even want to cry. I wanted them to pay. Not just financially, though they'd stolen enough. I wanted them to feel the same bewilderment, the same gut-deep betrayal that had been eating me alive. They'd made one mistake in all their careful planning. They'd underestimated what happens when you back a woman into a corner and leave her with nothing left to lose. I walked to my laptop and opened a blank document. At the top I typed, "Timeline, Operation Golden Goose." They wanted to play strategic games? They wanted to treat me like a commodity. Fine. But they'd forgotten one crucial detail. I wasn't just any businesswoman. I was the woman who'd outmaneuvered every competitor in Columbus to build Midwest flavors from a folding table into a six-figure operation. I was the woman who'd spent 32 years learning Victor's every habit, every weakness, every secret pleasure. And I was the woman who'd supported Brittany through nursing school, which meant I knew exactly what medical knowledge she had, and what she didn't. The beauty of living with someone for 32 years is that you know their patterns better than they know themselves. Victor was a creature of habit, and those habits were about to become his downfall. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Victor went to the gym after work. Planet Fitness on Sawmill Road, exactly 6:15 p.m. He'd text me at 6:10 with the same message. "Hitting the gym. I'll be home by 8. Then he'd shower there, change into his date night clothes that he kept in his gym bag, and drive straight to whatever hotel Brittany had picked for their rendezvous. I'd been tracking this routine for 2 weeks, thinking I was going crazy. Now I realized I was documenting evidence. The gym bag was key. Victor kept it in the hall closet, packed and ready. Inside, alongside his workout clothes and toiletries, was a small bottle of personal lubricant. Same brand, same size every time. He restocked it religiously because, as he'd once told me during happier times, he was particular about quality. That particular nature was going to destroy him. First, I secured my evidence. Marcus had given me copies of everything on encrypted flash drives, but I made additional copies and stored them in 3 separate safety deposit boxes across town. One at Huntington, one at Chase, one at a small credit union Brittany had never heard of. I also uploaded everything to a secure cloud storage service under a fake name. If they wanted to play dirty with legal documents, they'd discover that 2 could forge signatures. I'd been practicing Victor's handwriting for weeks, and I was getting very good at it. Next came the shopping trip. I drove 45 minutes to a hardware store in Delaware, Ohio, far enough from Columbus that no one would recognize me. Paid cash, wore a baseball cap, and kept my head down. Industrial-strength cyanoacrylate adhesive, the kind used for permanent metal bonding, the kind that warns in bold letters. Bonds skin instantly. Seek immediate medical attention if contacted with sensitive areas. Perfect. I also bought rubber gloves, exact change for the transaction, and a prepaid cell phone. Every precaution had to be perfect because this was going to be a one-shot operation. Back home, I practiced the timing. Victor's gym bag routine was precise. He'd grab it from the closet at exactly 6:05, throw it in his car, and leave by 6:10. That gave me a window every Tuesday and Thursday when the bag was unattended in his car for maybe 90 seconds while he started the engine and adjusted his mirrors. But I needed longer than 90 seconds. I needed him inside the gym, settled into his routine, completely focused on maintaining his lie to me while preparing for his night with my sister. The real window would come at the gym. Victor always locked his car, but I'd been keeping track of where he parked. Same general area every time, under the light pole near the front entrance. He'd be inside for exactly 30 minutes, just long enough to maintain the illusion of actually working out before meeting Brittany. 30 minutes to switch out one small bottle for another. 30 minutes to set in motion the kind of humiliation that would match the betrayal I'd endured for months. As I sat in my kitchen that Thursday evening, holding the superglue and staring at Victor's empty chair, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Peace. Not happiness. Not satisfaction. Just the calm that comes from knowing exactly what you're going to do and exactly why you're going to do it. Tomorrow was Tuesday. Victor would go to the gym. He would prepare for another night of betraying our marriage with my sister. And I would be ready. Tuesday evening arrived with the punctuality of a funeral procession. At 5:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. Victor's text was as predictable as sunrise. Big client presentation ran late. Going to grab dinner and work on some files at the office. Don't wait up for me, beautiful. Beautiful. He still called me beautiful while planning to destroy my life. I stared at that message for a long moment, then typed back. No problem, honey. I'll probably turn in early anyway. Love you. The lie tasted like poison in my mouth, but it was necessary. In 32 years of marriage, I'd never not told Victor that I loved him before bed. Tonight couldn't be the night to break pattern. At 6:15, I heard his car pull out of the driveway. Through the kitchen window, I watched him drive toward what he thought was another perfect evening with Brittany, funded by my money, in a hotel room paid for with our joint credit card. I waited 20 minutes. Then I put on the rubber gloves I'd bought in Delaware. Victor's office was exactly as he'd left it, laptop closed, paper stacked with his usual obsessive neatness, and his gym bag tucked beside his desk chair where he'd placed it after returning from his workout on Thursday. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me. I'd expected nerves. Second thoughts, maybe even a moment of mercy for the man I'd once promised to love in sickness and in health. Instead, I felt surgically calm. I unzipped the bag and found the small bottle exactly where I knew it would be. Same brand, same size, same blue and white label. The lubricant that had facilitated months of betrayal with my own sister. Using a small syringe I bought at a pet store, for giving medicine to my cat. As I told the confused clerk, I carefully extracted the original contents and disposed of them down the office bathroom sink. Then, drop by careful drop, I filled the container with industrial-strength superglue. The consistency was almost identical. Same viscosity, same clear appearance. Victor would never notice the difference until it was far too late. I placed the bottle back in the exact position where I'd found it, wiped down every surface I might have touched, and sealed the used syringe in a plastic bag that would go into a dumpster across town tomorrow. As I zipped up his gym bag and positioned it exactly as he'd left it, I felt a moment of something that might have been sadness. Not for what I'd done, but for what had led me to this moment. 32 years of marriage, ended not with an argument or even an honest conversation, but with a small act of chemical revenge that would humiliate them both in the most intimate way possible. The trap was set. Now all I had to do was wait for them to spring it. Would you have stopped, or would you have seen it through to the end? The next morning, I delivered the performance of my lifetime over coffee and toast. Victor, honey, I completely forgot to mention, I have that big catering pitch in Cincinnati today. The Marriott downtown wants to discuss an exclusive contract for all their corporate events. I watched his face carefully as I spoke, and what I saw made my stomach turn. For just a split second, his eyes lit up with something that looked like Christmas morning. Pure, barely contained excitement. Oh wow, that's fantastic, Ronnie. He was already reaching for his phone, probably to text Brittany. How long will you be gone? Probably overnight. You know how these corporate meetings drag on. And if it goes well, they'll want to take me to dinner to discuss terms. I buttered my toast with studied casualness. I should be home tomorrow afternoon. That's perfect. I mean, that's great for the business. He caught himself, but not quickly enough. I might work late myself, catch up on some files I've been putting off. I bet you will. I thought, watching him text under the table like a teenager. After Victor left for work, I packed a small overnight bag and put it in my car, just in case anyone was watching. Then I walked across the street to Mrs. Chen's house. 83 years old, sharp as a tack, and the neighborhood's unofficial watch commander. "Veronica dear, what can I do for you?" she asked, opening her door with a smile. "Mrs. Chen, I have the most embarrassing problem. I'm locked out of my house, and I have a furniture delivery coming this afternoon. I was wondering if I could sit on your front porch and wait for them? I promise I won't be any trouble." Her face immediately softened with concern. "Oh honey, of course. Kumein. Kumein. Would you like some tea?" Mrs. Chen's living room had enormous windows that faced directly toward my house. Perfect surveillance position. I accepted her offer of tea and settled into the chair by the window, claiming I wanted to watch for the delivery truck. "You know," Mrs. Chen said, settling beside me with her own cup, "I've been noticing some unusual activity at your house lately. That young woman. Isn't that your sister? She's been visiting quite often when Victor's car is there, but yours isn't." My blood ran cold, but I kept my voice level. "Really? Brittany didn't mention stopping by when I wasn't home." "Oh yes, several times. Always in the afternoons, always when you're working. And they never seem to answer the door when I wave." She gave me a meaningful look over her teacup. "I hope everything's all right, dear." Everything was about to be very far from all right, but not in the way Mrs. Chen was worried about. "I'm sure it's fine," I said, settling deeper into the chair. "Brittany probably helps Victor with some paperwork sometimes." We sat in comfortable silence, two old neighbors having tea and watching the street. Except I wasn't watching the street. I was watching my house like a hawk, waiting for the moment when Victor and Brittany would walk into the trap I'd set. At 3:17 p.m., Victor's car pulled into our driveway. He was home 3 hours earlier than his usual schedule, confirming what I already knew. This was going to be their big celebration. A full night alone in our house, in our bed, funded by money stolen from our accounts. 10 minutes later, Brittany's Honda pulled up behind his car. The stage was set. The actors were in position. At 3:27 p.m., I watched Brittany walk up to my front door like she owned the place. She didn't knock. She had a key. Of course she had a key. They disappeared inside my house. And I forced myself to wait. Mrs. Chen had gone upstairs for her afternoon nap, leaving me alone at the window with nothing but my racing heartbeat and the smart home app Victor had proudly installed last Christmas. "For our security," he'd said then. The irony tasted bitter now. I watched the upstairs bedroom light flick on. Our bedroom. The bed where I'd slept beside Victor for 15 years was about to become their playground, and they thought they had all the privacy in the world. At 4:15 p.m., I opened the app with trembling fingers and remotely turned the kitchen stove to high heat. The cast iron pan I'd strategically left with just enough oil to create thick choking smoke would do the rest. No real fire. I wasn't trying to burn down my own home. Just enough chaos to bring the cavalry. The wait was agony. Every second stretched like an hour as I imagined what was happening in my bedroom. My stomach churned, but I forced myself to stay focused. This was bigger than my disgust. This was justice. At 4:22 p.m., gray smoke began billowing from our kitchen window. By 4:25, Mrs. Patterson was on her porch pointing at my house. The Hendersons came running out of their front door. Within minutes, half the neighborhood was outside, phones pressed to their ears. 911, what's your emergency? The Martinez house is on fire. There's smoke everywhere. I pressed my face against Mrs. Chen's window as sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, more urgent. Fire Chief Jake Miller, the same man whose daughter's wedding I'd catered last spring, was about to get the shock of his professional life. The fire trucks rounded the corner at 4:31 p.m. like red angels of chaos. Behind them came paramedics, police cars, and what looked like every emergency vehicle in Columbus County. The quiet suburban street transformed into a disaster zone in seconds. Mrs. Chen stumbled downstairs, awakened by the sirens. Dear God. Veronica. Your house. I have to get over there, I said, but my legs felt like concrete. I wanted to see this. Needed to see this. Through the chaos and smoke, I watched Chief Miller coordinate his team with military precision. I watched firefighters surround my house, axes in hand, ready to save lives. I watched as they smashed through my front door and rushed inside to rescue whoever might be trapped in that smoke-filled house. They had no idea they were about to become part of the most humiliating moment of two people's lives. The firefighters disappeared through my shattered front door, and for a moment, the street felt eerily quiet, except for the rumble of idling fire engines. Then I heard it. A scream, muffled by the walls of my house, but unmistakably male. Unmistakably Victor. The sound of pure animalistic panic that made every neighbor on the street freeze in their tracks. Mrs. Patterson grabbed her husband's arm. What was that? Another scream. Higher pitch this time. Brittany. I pressed my hand to my mouth, feigning shock, while inside I felt something that scared me with its intensity. Not satisfaction, not relief. Something darker and more complete. Chief Miller emerged from my house 2 minutes later, and I'll never forget the expression on his weathered face. He looked like a man who'd seen combat and natural disasters, but nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for what he'd just witnessed in my master bedroom. He stood on my front porch for a moment, removing his helmet and running his hand through his gray hair. Then his eyes found mine across the chaos. He walked over slowly, like a man approaching a funeral. Mrs. Martinez, he said quietly, his voice carefully controlled. Are you the homeowner? Yes, that's my house. Is everyone okay? Is there much damage? I let my voice shake just enough. Concerned wife. Worried about her home and her husband. Chief Miller glanced back at the house, then at the crowd of neighbors hanging on every word. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. Ma'am, there's no fire. Just some smoke from the kitchen. But we found. He paused, clearly struggling with how to explain the unexplainable. We found 2 individuals in your bedroom who appear to be stuck together. Intimately. We've called for paramedics with special equipment. The crowd around us erupted in whispers and gasps. Mrs. Patterson's eyes went wide. The Henderson kids were quickly ushered inside by their mortified parents. Stuck together? I repeated, my voice climbing to the perfect pitch of confused horror. I don't understand. Who's in my house? Before Chief Miller could answer, the paramedics wheeled a stretcher out of my front door. Victor was on it, covered by a sheet, but I could see his face. Red as a fire engine. Eyes wild with humiliation and pain. Behind him came a second stretcher carrying Brittany, equally covered, equally destroyed. As they loaded Victor into the ambulance, his desperate eyes found mine across the sea of emergency vehicles and gawking neighbors. In that moment he knew. I could see the recognition dawn in his expression, the horrible understanding that this wasn't an accident. I gave him the smallest smile, just a tiny upward curve of my lips that only he could see. His face crumpled completely. Their public humiliation was complete. Half the neighborhood had witnessed their most intimate moment turned into a medical emergency. The story would spread through Columbus like wildfire. But for me? This was just the beginning. The real revenge. The part that would destroy their futures, their finances, and their freedom. That was what came next. Were you shocked by my story? Would you have reacted in a worse or less intense way? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. I can't wait to connect with you there. I truly appreciate your love and support. There's plenty more stories to come on the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. I'll see you in the next story. With love, Aunt Noir.